Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Millennium Live. This is the podcast where we explore the innovation that's transforming the digital enterprise. And in light of our transformational CRO assembly, discuss the strategies that are shaping the world of revenue and sales. I'm your host, Conor Tuohy, and today we have an incredibly insightful guest that's joining us. We have Ross Rich. He is the founder and CEO of Accord, and he's on a mission to revolutionize the way enterprise revenue teams execute and drive growth. So, a little bit about Ross. He is a Y Combinator alum, proud Canadian. So that's good for you, Ross. Based out of
Yeah,
Toronto.
are the tariffs for the show now? I don't know.
No, I'm on your side, man. But before Accord, Ross spent 4 years scaling Stripe's sales team from just three to over 300, and which is impressive alone. But in a somewhere in a past life, he worked at Columbia Records with well-known artists, as many of you might recognize the names of Calvin Harris and Snoop Dogg and Pharrell. So. Ross, you have a great track record already in my book. So welcome to the Millennium Live podcast. It's really good to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, maybe we'll save the music industry conversations over drink sometime. But yeah, I can
Yeah.
definitely dive into some of the revenue stuff.
Yes, yes, which is definitely what we're here to talk about today, and a little bit about Accord before we get into it. They're helping companies like Figma, Xactly, Freshworks, and honestly, hundreds of revenue teams drive execution excellence by enforcing their standards for how they sell, onboard, expand with prospects and customers. And specifically in today's episode, we're going to be diving into really the term execution excellence and what that truly means. Explore how companies can elevate their deal execution, driving win rates, and improve the full customer journey, all with the help of Accord's powerful platform. So, if you're an executive sales leader and you're struggling with product adoption, we're going to discuss how Accord definitely ensures how both buyers and sellers are discovering real value from their platform. So, Ross, excited to dive in. I think a good way to start is kind of, even with your given your background, why you started Accord in the first place and the problem that you saw that you're looking to solve.
Totally. Yeah. I basically just wanted to build the tool that I wish I had when we were scaling Stripe's revenue team. First joined there as a seller, and then moved up the ranks, and realized that the way I could contribute wasn't necessarily closing that next deal or have my team be more successful, was helping the rest of the business understand how to kind of replicate the winning playbooks and processes that we had figured out over the years. And so it was working with our CRO, our head of enablement, our head of revenue operations, of how do we replicate what the best top performers and leaders are doing across the business. And I found that the tools that we had to do that, like adding more fields to Salesforce, changing stage names, internal playbooks and resources and SOPs, just really took reps off the field and didn't really change the conversations that we were having with our prospects and customers. And the things that reps were eating up and really leaning into were the customer facing, documents that our top performers were building. So everything from, business value cases and mutual success plans and stakeholder maps and all the things that they'd actually collaborate with their champions and customers on to get deals done. And so the idea behind Accord is how can we help revenue leaders set what great looks like at their organization based on what their top performers are doing, and really enforce and reinforce that across the field in a field friendly way, instead of just asking them to fill out more, medic scorecards or QBR docs and all these things that, again, take them off the field and don't change the conversations that you're having with your customers. So that's kind of the idea, is this, really field friendly way of setting and reinforcing and holding yourself and your team accountable to what you would consider, great execution with your clients.
Yeah. And so, what is execution excellence, and even more importantly, why should sales teams really embrace this term?
Yeah, we're really leaning into again what happens on the field versus the strategy. Because when I talk to leaders, I don't think they're like, we have the wrong strategy, we have the wrong ICP, our product doesn't work. It's really, we're just not consistently always doing the right things. There's gaps in how we're working with customers. We have, maybe poor handoffs from pre to post sales. We could be reaching out to more stakeholders on key enterprise deals. We could be getting on site more, better executive engagement. Really, it comes down to how you're raising the bar across your team and consistently doing, again, what that top 10 or 20% of your team is doing, that's probably bringing in 60, 70+% of the revenue. So the idea of execution excellence is, how do we raise the bar of how we're consistently working with our customers and holding ourselves accountable to, hey, if the top people are able to do this, how can we raise that middle? How can we make sure that we are engaging with more stakeholders, getting higher and wider on deals, and really pitching value and kind of value selling versus pitching features and functionality. So that's kind of what it means, and feels like in 2025 and even the last couple of years, people have really shifted with purse strings tightening, with layoffs, with interest rates going from near 0% skywards. We need to be doing better to bring in the same amount of revenue, and the bar is really raised for how we show up with our customers. So hopefully that's some helpful context on what execution excellence means, and I think why so many leaders are really focused on this, really from the board down, where we work with a lot of PE and VC firms that are trying to bring this level of rigor and operational excellence to their revenue organizations.
Absolutely. And, one of the things I probably talk a lot on your podcast, and what I want to bring to this one, is the idea of, up leveling deal execution. So, what does this look like for enterprise revenue organizations?
um a lot of things come to mind, from the micro of, we're just not talking to the right stakeholders, we're afraid of again going higher and wider, all those pieces, to how we're operationalizing our own organization in terms of the pre to post sales. Do we have enough focus on existing customers? So I think there's so many pieces there, maybe to kind of start big and then to get smaller. I think I've seen much more of a shift from these siloed organizations of sales and just net new business. And then there's an onboarding and a PS team, and they use totally different tools. They speak totally different languages. And as much as we try to say we want to stay with the customer, blah, 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 like that just doesn't happen from an organizational level. And same thing with post sales. I think I'm seeing much more of a focus on the CRO role and truly owning revenue, not just a glorified C-suite title for a sales leader, and much more alignment across marketing, across sales, across PS, and customer success and account management. So I think that's one really, really big trend that is elevating how folks are going to market, and is really important to, I think, outcompeting and succeeding in this market today.
Speaking of shifts, I think this is a interesting question about how companies can really move from a feature-based, go to market, to a value-based sales motion. How do they do this?
Um, it's hard and requires, I think, a lot more work and commitment over time than a lot of teams would like to do. I think previously, again, was just, it's a sales team thing. Hey, our sellers on calls need to be doing this. And I think, again, I've seen this start at the CEO level, and it's across the product leader, it's across the marketing leader, it's across engineering. How are we building towards and talking about the product and the value that we're bringing to the market, instead of just hoping our sales team is telling a better story? Um, so it's a company wide initiative. It takes quarters and years to really drive, but I think it's worth the investment, because I've seen this make huge impacts in terms of our company's average order size going from maybe 6 figure to 7 figure, multiple 7 figures. I think it really starts with understanding not what your product does for customers, but the outcomes from that. Like, what does this, how do we help companies save money or generate more money, and it waterfalling from there. So, yeah, anything in particular, the value selling journey that would be helpful to dive into, Connor?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good segue because many organizations have moved from a new business focus to that
Yeah.
full customer journey and net revenue retention. And how does Accord help revenue teams improve the customer journey?
Yeah, I think changing it from what are just sales stages or customer journey stages from an inward perspective on our CRM. So if you're using, Salesforce example, here's the 5 or 6 stages of a customer. Well, it's a very inward perspective because we use this to forecast, right? Why does this tool exist in the first place? To keep track of accounts, contacts, and for forecasting. Well, if you take that perspective, you're not thinking about it in terms of the key milestones and stages of the customer's journey, which they don't care about any of the pre-sale stages or even onboarding stages. They care about getting to value. So unless you orient the entire process around that, kind of outcome for the customer and really clear joint success criteria that you have together, nothing else really matters. So Accord gives you that customer, because it's customer facing, that customer facing perspective of what are the actual stages from their perspective. And we should be designing our go to market and customer experience from their point of view instead of a forecasting perspective. So I think that's a really big way of just shifting the lens of, how do we forecast and commit our deals to how do we actually drive customers to value and orient our sellers, our sales engineers, our onboarding specialists, our customer success managers around them getting to value.
One of the other things that could be really tough is product adoption. So how do you ensure, you work with customers on all the time and you hear from them. How do you ensure the usage of Accord on both the buyer and seller side?
Yeah, it's kind of a meta challenge because a lot of people, a lot of companies struggle with their own product adoption, and I think the core of that is they might not be talking to the right people during the sales and onboarding process that are going to be responsible for using it and the right resources to set it up post sales. So how, very meta again, because how we do this is how we support customers in doing this, which is making sure during the sales process, we're getting buy-in and commitment from the folks that need to resource rolling out a tool or a piece of software or service, right? So when you think about it, you might be selling the decision maker or getting budget, but are you selling to and getting buy-in from the folks that actually need to maybe on the back end from an IT perspective set it up and hold their team accountable to using it, right? So a lot of times you're selling to, maybe a CIO, someone that owns the tooling at a company, maybe a revenue leader, but now do you already have the buy-in from maybe RevOps who are setting up the tool to actually drive that adoption? So I think it's a lot of slowing down to speed up in both our process and how we're trying to help companies do this, which is you might need to engage with more stakeholders than you typically would just to get a deal done to make your customers successful. And signing a deal, getting leads, all that stuff is, and paying your sales folks is super expensive. If your customers aren't getting to value and actually using it, the lifetime value isn't going to be there to build a sustainable, profitable business. And I'm again seeing a lot of people shift to understanding and focusing on that GRR, gross retention number, and NRR number versus just top line revenue. And yeah, if people aren't using your tool, from your question, people aren't adopting your tool, well, what value are they going to get? And are they really going to renew? Maybe for the last 10 years, it's easier maybe not to pull it out, or is it even the CFO looking at these numbers? Well, now they definitely are. And you need to be hyper vigilant about driving that product adoption.
Right. So a couple of interesting questions for you as we kind of wrap up this podcast. But someone who has founded a company, and these both have to deal with sales, but just curious about what's the hardest part of building a company from scratch?
I think the hardest part, building a company from scratch or not from scratch or just in life is always the people, right? They're the ones that make or break the company, and making sure the right people are on board, making sure they understand the mission and vision, and kind of consistently setting the pace, and keeping everyone, motivated and committed, I think is always, the number one upside and number one challenge. So I would say it was, going from being a top seller and sales leader to having to, think about the whole company, right? You have your investors, you have your employees, you have the different departments from, product, marketing, engineering, et cetera. and all the other stakeholders like your customers. So I would say just kind of how you multiply the people challenge of running a business is probably the hardest thing of creating something from 0 to 1.
Yeah, that's a great summary in like a minute to starting a company. So we could probably build off that later in our music chat. But last question for you, Ross. This is an exciting time. I think you're getting into it at a great time. But the future of sales, things as we know it with technology change at such a rapid pace. And so I'm curious about what your take is on what sales will look like, in 5 years' time in the future. AI is going to have a lot to do with pretty much every industry and where AI fits into the revenue cycle. Curious in getting your take on this.
I think sales continuously gets harder as there's both more options out there for other vendors because the cost of building new technology goes down. So especially if you're thinking about the kind of enterprise side of things in technology, the cost of competitors, building a product goes down. So I think the bar for sellers goes up with how complicated things get, but also how much more information there is out there, right? You mentioned AI. Well, now how much time do buyers need to spend with sellers to understand the product offerings when they can use AI? So I think the job of a seller changes from more of this like information gathering and sharing to having a stronger point of view. I think the bar is really raised for sellers to be, you know, true consultants and really understand the market and the alternatives, not just their product and features and solutions, but how have other people solved this problems, really understanding the competitive alternatives and standing out as someone that the buyer just really wants to spend time with to understand how they could solve this problem and the existing problems and other stakeholders at their organization, then more of the information gathering and sharing. I think that's been a trend for a while now. I think it's been a trend since the start of the internet, right? Because there's
Yeah.
G2 reviews out there, all this research that you can do. I think, but more than ever, with more other options out there and all this information at their fingertips, I think they're really looking for direction. What I find is buyers, when they talk to someone that really understands the space, you kind of earn that right to be involved in more conversations, get more introductions to other stakeholders at the business. But the bar for that is, I think, continuing to go up. So I think top performers are going to be more valuable than ever. I think it's an opportunity for sellers and sales leaders to actually make a lot more money and be more valuable inside companies. But the opposite, right? If you're not able to elevate, if you're not able to be that consultative salesperson or drive a value oriented sales organization as a VP of sales or CRO, I think it's going to be very challenging to compete.
Right. And you know what? You are in sales, Ross, and you did mention that of course there's a crowded market with in terms of vendors and other solutions that are out there.
Totally.
You have a 30-second elevator pitch as to why Accord stands out as the leader in this space.
Yeah, I think it's all about understanding where the salesperson can be the most impactful and where technology can be impactful. And the way that we look at Accord and building our AI tools and all that kind of stuff is really making the salespeople and your sales leaders, giving them superpowers, giving them unlimited information in terms of how are we integrating insights from AI models to understand their customers better and how to show up better. And really driving that adoption of the tools than just buying technology for technology's sake. So I would say really understanding the human dimension as we're focused on supporting real enterprise vendors and how they're engaging with their customers versus the kind of shiny new tool that your team might not actually engage with. So yeah, it's been interesting to see kind of how AI and all these new vendors are going to market.
Yeah, right. Well, Ross Rich, founder and CEO of Accord, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me on Millennium Alliance podcast. It was awesome to chat. Let's do it again. Let's dive into some music and some fun stuff as well. You're a great partner, so we look forward to working with you in the future, man.
Awesome. Sounds good, Connor. Thanks a lot.